Welcome everyone to the 2018 Mobile County Public Schools football preseason kickoff show. We're here to start another season of high school football, and we're excited to get started. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our teams and the different regions that our schools and teams will be competing in. But first I want to introduce guests at our table today that'll be discussing our football teams and the preseason that's coming up. We'll talk to the voices of the Mobile County Public School System, Mr. Al Whedon and Mr. Corey LeBounty. You'll be hearing those guys all year and the excitement that they bring, and we really appreciate what they do for our school system, and we're really excited, for another year. And on the far end, Mr. Mike Herndon from the Office of Communications, who is also very actively involved in our athletic programs and sports, and we're just looking forward to a great year. And we want to kind of jump right into things and talk about 7A Region 1 and discuss a little bit about what we're going to look forward to, the teams compared maybe from last year to this year, the excitement that a lot of new schools are bringing in with new coaches, returning players, and kind of go through a little bit about what to expect for the season. So when we're talking about 7A Region 1, we can talk about a region that has a high quality of football, I think it's safe to say. And let's talk a little bit about Baker High School. Baker probably didn't have the type of year that they wanted to last year. What are some things that we can expect from Baker?
Brad, I would say Baker last year had some expectations that probably didn't come out the way Coach Danny Smith wanted. I remember early in the season they had to reschedule a game and they picked up a couple extra home games. So I believe Baker had maybe 6 or 7 home games last year, and their record didn't pan out the way they wanted. I believe they were about 3-7. We covered them the first 2 weeks, Corey and myself. We had them for the big game against Murphy, which was huge. It was a 7A Region 1 game in week 1. So it was pretty huge for them. So this year, a lot of expectations on the line for Baker. I would say it's a team not rebuilding, but they're trying to find themselves with quarterback. Coach Danny Smith mentioned at media days they were going to still try to run the ball. Right. So it's a lot of things maybe up in the air for Baker, and that's a tough region. It's kind of like SEC West down here in Mobile, Brad.
It is. Do y'all have any comments? Baker?
Yeah, Baker's bringing in a new coordinator system. You're bringing in Justin Patterson, the new offensive coordinator, and J.C. Todd is going to be his new defensive coordinator. So anytime you have 2 new voices on the sidelines, it was very instrumental and helpful for Danny Smith to have these guys in for the spring game. And they went out and competed against Blunt, and now the players are acclimated to their voices and having an opportunity with 2 new coordinators. I know Danny Smith is looking to turn it around, and he feels like it's playoffs or bust for this year, and this is going to be his 4th season at Baker High School.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think Baker has set some high expectations, and I know Coach Smith bringing in, as you mentioned, 2 new coordinators. It kind of brings in a little maybe rejuvenation for the program. And I know they're expecting, big things and a turnaround this year. But like we said, it's a tough region. It's a knockdown every week. And it'll be exciting to see how they respond and especially the players putting in 2 new systems offensively and defensively. Alma Bryant, first-year head coach last year, Coach Hain. What are the expectations this year?
Well, obviously they kind of got the ball rolling last year. Had a couple of big wins. Big win over Baker really kind of set the tone for what they hope is the first step toward a big turnaround. And now it's just let's see if they can keep the momentum going. I know they've got a lot of players back from last year. They got a little confidence going from last year. Can they take that and build it to the next step? Build it to getting over that 500 mark and possibly getting into playoffs.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. We had that game last year where they beat Baker, and as Mike just talked about, that was kind of a, hey, we're here. And as Corey and I even talked about it that night, their record didn't indicate it, but at that time with that win, Bryant was still technically a playoff contending team at that point. The playoff seeds hadn't worked themselves out, so they were still in contention. So Coach Hain talked about it at media days. He's got Rajay Bowie coming back as quarterback. I'm expecting Bryant to be on the positive side. I'm expecting them to be a 500 team at least. That's the expectation I have for Alma Bryant.
Well, and from what I saw last year with Alvin Ryan, I mean, Coach Haynes seemed to install kind of a smash mouth attitude. I mean, they really run the ball downhill and seemed to be a pretty physical team, especially along the offensive and defensive lines. Of course, you know, that's a huge key to be able to control the line of scrimmage. We all know that.
And if you look at that program's history since they started in '98, I think it was, the years that they've had a lot of success, they have played smash mouth football. Right. Even when Rush Probst was there, who's known for throwing the ball, they were a smash mouth run football team, and that's kind of what that school has been. So it doesn't surprise me that they're going back to that.
Yeah, in year 2 now with Coach Haynes, those players and the coaches there know his expectations, and a year under the belt, it'd be exciting to see how much they grow from last year after I would say a successful first year.
Yeah, you have 7 defensive players coming back and 4 offensive. And Al mentioned that you have Mr. Bowie. He's a third-year starter at that quarterback position. So I think when you have somebody at the helm who knows exactly what is expected of him and can be a leader on that team, I think Bryant's going to improve this year also.
All right, Davidson Warriors.
Davidson, you can say, is a team where every other year it's odd. The offense and defense doesn't match up. One year the team have a great defense. Right. One year they have a great defense, the next year they have a great offense.
Right.
And this is a year where the offense will probably outshine the defense, which is interesting. At media days, the All-State kicker was there, Joe Montano. He hasn't missed an extra point, hasn't missed a field goal in his entire career. The quarterback, Tim Johnson, is back. Running back, Kobe Blunt, he kind of had a breakout season last year. But they lost some big names on defense. Jeff Marks, one of the guys they lost from last year. So I think the pressure's on Davidson this year. Can the offense help out the defense this season?
And I think that's going to be instrumental for the Davidson Warriors. When you have a kicking weapon like Joe Montano who can flip the field, he was able to do that consistently. And I think with that type of offensive firepower with Kobe Blunt carrying the load 25 to 30 times, I think Davidson has an opportunity to control the clock throughout the season offensively.
Clearly, this is an offense that runs through Kobe Blunt, and I think that when they finally realized that last year is when that team started to hit its stride. Early on, they had some offensive struggles, and Tim Johnson mentioned it at Media Day. I had to learn what I could and could not do and play to my strengths. And that offense, I think, realized its strength was handing the ball to Kobe Blunt, and once they figured that out, that's when that team really started taking off. He's going to get the ball a lot this year.
And I think, I mean, special teams. I mean, having a great kicker at the high school level is so beneficial and important to flip, like you mentioned, flip the field, but also making all your PATs and being able to kick field goals. I mean, that many times is the difference in football games. So having that person, confidence in that person standing on the sideline that can come out and do those things can only help Davidson.
I agree. I mean, you asked Tim Johnson at preseason media days, he said he's improved in the passing game, and that's something that the Davidson Warriors are going to have to do, because if you get behind the sticks early, you're going to have to find a way to convert, and that's something that
and
I
every
know
team's going to come in to stop.
Exactly. So Tim knew that was his biggest improvement, trying to have a higher completion percentage, and that's something that I think we'll see effective as the Davidson Warriors go forward.
All right, MGM Vikings. Mary Montgomery Vikings. New coach.
No place to go but up.
That's right, Coach McCain. You know, last year, of course, they were unable to muster out a win, and had a coaching change. Coach McCain coming in. What's the vibe in Viking land?
I would say the vibe, I feel, looks pretty good. I predict myself MGM will not have an offer this season. They will get a win or 2, maybe 3. Think about this. Last year at the Battle of West Mobile, they entered that game with 44 sophomores. All those kids are juniors now. Right. And Coach McCain talked about some of those kids were playing high school varsity football for the first time last season. So they have some experience under their belt. And he alluded to that at media days, saying that those kids are stepping up and those kids have that game time experience that they need this season for the Vikings. So I'm expecting the Vikings to get some wins this season.
I agree, Al. I mean, the Sims community is very hungry. They support the MGM Vikings regardless of the record. But if you look at Coach McCain, I think one of the benefits that he's going to have is he was on staff a year ago. With that being said, I think he has an opportunity to know the personnel and get a chance for the kids to trust them. It's a different type of voice, and sometimes kids respond differently to different voices.
And the thing about Mary Montgomery is they knew going into last year that they were young and they were going to struggle. It was no surprise that they were going to have a hard time competing with most of this region. So this is the next step. Those kids are a little bit older now, and I think they had a decent freshman class behind that sophomore class even. So as those kids get that game experience, they took their lumps last year, they learned from it, and now try to build on it.
Well, and so you're bringing in, seems to be a group of young, experienced kids going into their junior year with the new coach, Coach McCain, bringing in some assignment. Never know, you know, what they can do and what their capabilities are. We'll see. It should be interesting for sure.
Should be.
Murphy Panthers, traditional playoff team year to year. Struggled a little bit last year under Coach Barnes' first year. What's to expect with the Panthers this year?
Second-year head coach Muskegon Barnes coming off a 3-7 season. Anytime you lose 9 out of 11 defensive starters, it's going to be tough. But he has one returning starter on the defensive line, and that being Kendall Adams-Young. And this is a young man that he's very passionate about the game of football. He leads by example. He's very vocal on the football field. So with what Coach Barnes has coming back, I think he's going to put together a system to where you will see that traditional football and that traditional pride that Murphy has, and Murphy will be very successful.
I think they will be. Past couple of years, we would always coach with some of the previous coaches. We'll say it now. Coach Rick Colley used to coach there, and we would say, well, Coach, which Murphy team going to show up tonight? And he said, Al, I don't really know. Right. One of the things that Murphy has went through in the past couple of years is keeping their starters healthy. Couple times during the year, they would be without their starting quarterback, and they'd have to substitute a guy in. So if they can stay healthy, as Corey alluded to, I know the numbers are down with returning starters. They can stay healthy. Murphy should be pretty decent in Region 1 this year.
I mean, it's a Murphy team, and when you look at it, they took McGill down to the wire. They pretty much beat themselves, and here it is, McGill-Tulane plays in the state championship game, and if it's not for costly turnovers and costly penalties, Murphy has an opportunity to defeat McGill.
And if I'm not mistaken, Murphy lost about 3 or 4 really close games last year. That could have swung
Gone either way.
Direction.
That's right.
So
That's right.
maybe this year those close games will end up being in the other favor, you know, for Murphy. So we're looking forward to Coach Barnes in his second year for sure. Theodore High School. Coach Collier, it seems Theodore consistently has been a factor in 7A Region 1. What's the vibe in Bobcat land?
They made the playoffs, returned to the playoffs last year. We like to call it was the Andrews Air Force, and Trevor Andrews is gone now, but replaced by Tyler Underwood. So he sat back as an understudy for the past 2 years. I have big expectations for the Bobcats. I think the Bobcats are going to be a major contender in Region 1 play. Coach Eric Collier is really high on this team. He talked about it at media days. He said this team is probably one of the best ones he's had since he's been at Theodore, and he has some high expectations for them to go deep into the playoffs. So I'm looking a lot from the Bobcats this season.
8 defensive returning starters. That's going to be the strength. And anytime it starts on defense, because if the other team can't score, it makes a big difference. So you look at Eric Collier with the senior defensive back, Cameron Brown. He's a 3-year starter, and he's going to be the signal caller on that defensive side of the football that's going to make a difference for the Bobcats.
I think you mentioned the 8 defensive starters, but there's one really big one that's left, and that's that nose guard, Tamaje Porter. Big kid that can anchor that defensive line. They've got to find a replacement for him, whether it's one player or a series of players. That's going to be something they don't have this year. So they'll adjust for that, but that's going to be interesting to see how the depth of the defense as a whole makes up for that big loss.
Yeah, that is a huge loss because Tamaje Porter was a big factor last year in defense, as Mike just talked about.
Absolutely. Well, to kind of close out 7A Region 1, you have Fairhope, Foley, and McGill. We all know last 2 or 3 seasons, McGill has pretty much dominated 7A Region 1. It's I'm sure they'll be right there contending also. Fairhope had a great season last year too.
Yeah, made the playoffs.
Made the playoffs. Coach Carter does a good job over there. And Foley, not real sure, but historically we know Foley has always been a quality football team. So it's going to be week to week who can probably grind it out the hardest, stay healthy, and should be interesting.
It should be.
Yeah, though McGill's hasn't lost a region game in I think 2 years. There have been some close calls there, so it's not like they've been running roughshod over everybody. I know Davidson almost popped them a couple times, and Murphy played them pretty close. So it's not that wide a gap. It's just nobody's beating them. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody can get them this year.
But actually, I think it's 3 years, Mike. They haven't lost
Looking
a
forward,
game.
They all
it's
blend
definitely
together after a while.
looking forward to see what happens this year. All right, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll talk about 6A Region 1.
Hello, my name is Kyla Brown, and I am redefining ready. I'm taking AP and dual enrollment courses that will help me earn college credits while in high school. I am studying dental science that will assist me in my career choice of becoming a dentist. I am a Student Government Association representative and actively involved in other activities around my school and community. And this is how I am redefining ready.
The more parents are involved in school, the more likely it is a child will succeed. Children with involved parents and attend school regularly make better grades and have better social skills. Every involved parent makes a difference.
Get involved.
Ask about your child's day.
Explain how your education matters. Parent involvement, it matters.
You can find more information on parent involvement at MCPSS.com.
To be inside of the advanced placement program means that you are a student whose primary goal is to go to college. And being in the advanced placement makes that so much more real for those students who are inside of it.
I feel that students shouldn't be scared to go into being an AP scholar because it's not how smart you are and it's not like your GPA, it's how much work you put into your classes and how much you are dedicated to your classes.
Welcome back to our Mobile County Public Schools preseason football kickoff show. We're back now to talk about 6A Region 1. And there was a change in 6A Region 1 with the new reclassification this year. Added to the reclassification was the competitive balance rule, which promoted St. Paul's up from 5A to 6A. So we all know Region 1 6A was a brutal region to begin with. Now we add St. Paul's.
Toughest region in the state just got tougher.
It did.
It really did. The absolute toughest region in the state of
Definitely.
Alabama.
Blount High School. All right, Coach Holly has done a fantastic job in his stint at Blount High School. Blount has lost 33 seniors from last year. What are the expectations for Blount High School this year?
Coach Holly talked about it. He says this is his youngest team. You just mentioned it. He's made the playoffs every year that he's been at Blount. But I think this is probably his toughest year with the young kids that he has. But Coach Holly, knowing how Coach Holly is, he's going to hold them to the same standard. He's going to expect the same thing out of them as he did with his previous Blount teams. So I expect Blount to be just as competitive as they have been the past couple of years.
I mean, they finished 6-5 last year by Coach Holly's standards. Wasn't really where they wanted to be. They finished 4th in the region. Anytime you do lose 33 seniors, he's replacing his center, his running back, his quarterback. But with that youth, they have a bye week in week 5 or 6, right in the middle of the season. So I think on the back end of that schedule is where you're going to see this Blount team early. If you're going to strike Blount, you better get them early because I think later as the year goes on, as long as they stay healthy, I think they'll continue to improve as a team.
Yeah, he talked about that at media days. The past couple of years, Blunt's bye week has been the last week of the season. And he talked about how they went into the playoffs maybe a bit flat. They had injuries and didn't have time to heal. So with that bye week moving to the middle of the season, as Corey just said, they're going to use that as a strength to probably prepare themselves for the second half of the season.
They're going to need it because when you add St. Paul's to this region,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got Spanish Fort, you got Saraland, you got Daphne, which has done nothing but improve, and you've got a Baldwin County team that has gotten better every year under Nathan McDaniel. They almost cracked that playoff last year.
Sure
Came
did.
down to the wire for that
Sure
last
did.
spot. So they're going to have to get better as the year goes on if they want to continue that playoff streak.
Yeah, we talked about this region. I think there was some type of three-way tie, coin flip, real weird
fourth
scenario
spot,
to where we had to determine who was going to make that playoff position. And I think Baldwin County, coming off of a winning season, only losing 3 games and missing the playoffs.
That's right.
That's almost unheard of. So you look at big defensive lineman for the Blunt Leopards, Cortland Martin. He's going to anchor the defensive line. He can play linebacker or defensive end for Coach Holly, and that's going to make a difference because this young man, he's drawing attention from all types of schools, and he's a young man that carries himself very well on the field as well as off the field and makes people proud to put on that purple uniform. But the first game of the year, all bets off for Blunt Viger because Pritchard Stadium will be rocking, and that's the kind of environment that we're looking forward to in high school football.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really doesn't get better than the Battle of Pritchard.
Yeah.
Historically, those two teams, Viger and Blunt, have long-standing traditional powerhouses and also players that go on to the next level, if not even the NFL.
Correct.
You're exactly right. I mean, Coach Holly talked about it in media days. Having 31 kids signed scholarships in 3 years is something that Blunt High School definitely hangs its hat on academically as well as athletically.
I was watching the SEC Network the other day, and they had the Florida takeover. And who do I see? Kadarius Toney, who used to be quarterback at Blunt High School, running the Wildcat and scoring touchdowns. So they're definitely producing players to go to college to play ball. But as Coach Holly said, he's trying to produce young men who can be career citizens. Even if they don't play ball, they can get a quality education and be a great young man.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, Blunt losing a lot of experience, but I still think they're going to be a team to watch, especially as the year goes. If they can stay healthy and grow under Coach Holly and his staff, they'll be there in the end competing for a spot. BC Rain. BC Rain has had a lot of changes in the offseason. Coach Stone left the program and actually is coaching at Daphne now. As an assistant coach, and BC Rain hired Coach Rick Cawley.
Yep.
Well, what? The Red Raiders. What are we going to look forward to?
From blue to red.
I think BC Rain is in a tough spot. They are the smallest 6A school in the state.
That's right.
They could probably, if you want to say, benefit from a drop down back to 5A, but the numbers say they have to be in 6A. So the hand is kind of dealt for BC Rain. You have to play the schedule that you have. I think Coach Cawley is going to bring some interesting things to the Red Raiders this season. We know he's a good offensive mind and come up with a lot of trick plays. He had some great athletes when he was over at Murphy. KJ May went on to Minnesota. Great athletes over there. So I think he's going to try to instill to the Red Raiders, let's just go out and have some fun. You can only go up from what happened last season. So I think the Red Raiders will be exciting this season.
And now they have a signal caller in Clifford Powell. He's a 4-year varsity starter. Yeah. Came right out of middle school calling the shots for the Red Raiders. So the big, bright Friday night lights are not going to be too big for Clifford Powell. And he's going to run the show. He's going to be the leader physically, the leader mentally. And with Coach Cawley taking over late in the school year, not having an opportunity to get a lot of 7-on-7 work, he was waiting for school to start to really count his numbers. And Al mentioned that this is the smallest 6A school in the entire state of Alabama. They're coming off a 1-9 record, but the Red Raider program is one that you don't want to look over if you're any other 6A opponent, because the week that you take Coach Cawley and his Red Raiders for granted is the week that you get beat.
And I'll say this for them. I mean, at media days, they were the most laid-back, confident players I think that I saw all week, and talked a lot about the pride in their school. Yeah. I think they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder that they want to come out and prove people wrong this year.
Yeah, and we all know Coach Cawley has a long-standing history of coaching in Mobile County, being at Murphy for so long, and then he is known to be very innovative in his offensive. He's going to find a way to score points. But he was also able to bring in a couple of coaches that he had when he was at Murphy. Coach John Williams, who he came over from Saraland, and then Coach Ben Jones, who came over from Murphy on his staff at BC Range. Yeah. So I think bringing in a couple of guys that understand his expectations, along with the coaches that are currently there, never know what the Red Raiders are going to do this year.
Again, you look at their record, 1-9. You don't take them for granted. And right when you try to treat somebody like a doormat is the night that you get beat. So these other teams in 6A Region 1, we already call it the SEC West. And sometimes you look in SEC West in real life, Ole Miss turns around and beats Alabama on any given night. So the same thing can happen when we make that comparison to the SEC West.
Particularly when you've got an experienced, talented quarterback coming back, that it starts with him.
And they'll have a lot of people playing both ways. Jonathan Williams and William Blake will hold down the offensive and defensive line. And being the smallest school, that's what you see a lot of. There's numerous schools that have players playing both ways, defensively and offensively, but that just goes to show that they're in shape, they have a passion for the game, and they're doing whatever it takes to help their team win.
And as we mentioned earlier, talking about the strength of 6A Region 1, to finish the rest of the teams out, with St. Paul's, who has been a traditional power in 5A, now moving up into 6A Region 1. With Daphne, their program is back on the rise under Coach King. Baldwin County, as you mentioned, being a team that has improved over Coach McDaniel over the previous years. And Saraland, it has been a traditional team year in and year out as far as competing for a playoff spot. So it's tough. And I think it's safe to say that there might be a pretty good football team sitting at the house at the end of the year.
I think there'll be two.
Yeah. There'll be a couple teams. I agree with you, Mike.
A couple of good teams that are there. And you talked about depth for BC Rain and for Blunt too. Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, most of those kids are going to be playing one way.
Sure.
They're going to probably have 22 different starters. So how good a condition they're in, how they're able to hold up over the season is going to go a long way into determining how well they do.
And we've heard a lot of talk about St. Paul's going up to 6A and some of the things, but I'll put it to you this way. Every coach at Media Day in 6A Region 1 gave them the respect that they have as 3-time state champions. So it was, yes, welcome to 6A, but it was also welcome to 6A and you're going to see what we're about. So they're not intimidated by St. Paul's. Right. They actually welcome them in for the competitiveness. So I don't view it as if, oh, it's St. Paul's going up to 6A. This region, to me, actually got better with the addition of St. Paul's to 6A Region 1.
So no doubt, it'll be just like 7A Region 1. Any week, anybody can beat you.
That's right.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about 5A Region 1 and 4A Region 1.
Hello, my name is Kyla Brown, and I am redefining ready. I'm taking AP and dual enrollment courses that will help me earn college credits while in high school. I am studying dental science that will assist me in my career choice of becoming a dentist. I am a Student Government Association representative and actively involved in other activities around my school and community. And this is how I am redefining ready.
The more parents are involved in school, the more likely it is a child will succeed. Children with involved parents and attend school regularly make better grades and have better social skills. Every involved parent makes a difference.
Get involved. Ask about your child's day. Explain how your education matters. Parent involvement, it matters.
You can find more information on parent involvement at MCPSS.com.
To be inside of the advanced placement program means that you are a student whose primary goal is to go to college. And being in the advanced placement makes that so much more real for those students who are inside of it.
I feel that students shouldn't be scared to go into being an AP scholar because it's not how smart you are and it's not like your GPA, it's how much work you put into your classes and how much you are dedicated to your classes.
Welcome back to our show. This segment we're going to talk about 5A Region 1 and 4A Region 1. A little bit about 5A Region 1. In the past, I think it was safe to say the road had to go through Viger or St. Paul's. Now with St. Paul's out, there has been some changes with the reclassification in 5A Region 1. LaFleur actually moved down from 6A to 5A Region 1, and Satsuma moved up from 4A to 5A Region 1. Kind of talk about this region a little bit. We can start with the Viger Wolves. Traditionally, it's come down to St. Paul's and Viger each year. I would be safe to say expectations are the same with Coach Scott.
I think they're very higher actually this year. Brad, Coach Scott and the Viger Wolves past 2 seasons, 0-2, 0-3, and then they run the table, go to the playoffs. The next year they run the table, go to the playoffs. They're going deeper. I personally feel this is going to be a magical year for the Wolf Pack. I mean, they are bringing back starters, Kyle Walker, bringing back Jalen Whitsitt, the running back. The Viger Wolves will be a team to contend with in 5A Region 1.
26 seniors for Coach Scott, and you look at they were 9-4 in 2017, and you have defensive end Desmond Little, and in the spring they had an opportunity to scrimmage McGill-Tulane, and they really looked well, and they got inside the red zone and kind of self-inflicted themselves with a turnover, and McGill was able to scoop and score. So if Viger's able to stay away from beating themselves, I personally think Viger has enough firepower to win the 5A state championship. And you look at the past years, and Viger has been region champion. People overlook that. The state champion has been St. Paul's in 5A, but the region champion has been the Wolfpack. And I think the Wolfpack are trying to get past the third round now of the playoffs and just trying to keep as many home games at Pritchard Stadium as they can before they have an opportunity to end that season at Jordan-Hare.
I think, you mentioned it kind of went through St. Paul's, even though Viger won the region. Viger's been the hunter the last few years. Well, this year they're going to be the team everybody's looking to beat. They need to be careful about thinking they got this thing wrapped up, because as you know, Jackson Aggies are always a very good team under Danny Powell. That would be the team I'd keep my eye on as a top contender there. We'll talk about Citronelle in a few minutes. They're always competitive. I think the danger for them is getting a little complacent and thinking, hey, we won this region the last few years with St. Paul's in it. We got this thing wrapped up, and that's far from the case.
Yeah, Mike talked about that. Even Coach Scott alluded to it. The one thing that has held Viger back has been Viger. He talked about last year the kids, to a certain degree, weren't ready for Thanksgiving week. That was a football game, a playoff game, and they're thinking about Thanksgiving. And he said, you have to have your mindset ready. If you're going deep in the playoffs, you can't do those family things. You got to let the turkey go. We got to go to the ball field.
And they made up with a good football team in Demopolis.
They did.
Sure did.
Who was playing well at the time. But as you mentioned, Coach Scott seems to find a way. Even starting off that year 0-3, everybody started writing them off, but then they came back reeling off win after win after win. One thing that you're going to know that you get out of Viger, you're going to get a hard-nosed group of kids that don't quit. They play really good defense, and they're going to run the football.
Yeah, 7 offensive returners, 7 defensive returners. Knowing that this class was coming into 2019 4 years ago, you said if this class stays together, they have an opportunity to be special, and they're trying to get that blue map. And again, they want to end their season at Jordan-Hare. But Mike, you alluded to it. The biggest thing for the Viger Wolves are going to be not becoming complacent, not believing the hype, not believing what I'm sitting and believing that they become state champions, but each and every week taking and respecting each and every opponent in Region 1, 5A Region 1.
And I think that's a little bit where the pride of that program comes into play. I mean, you look at that program's history and the players that have come through there, Electron Williams, Sinderic Marks, Ellis Langster, list goes on and on. Willie Anderson. I mean, we can sit here and name a bunch of them and forget, a bunch more. Kids grow up in that community. They know the history of that program. They know about 1988. They know what that school has done in the past, and they want to live up to that. That type of pride, I think, is what helps guard you a little bit against that complacency. We don't want to be the Viger team that lets people down.
And we do have that game. We'll jump ahead, but not to give it away. But yeah, we do have that game, the Battle of Pritchard, this year.
That's right.
And I'm expecting Viger to put on quite a show. They haven't won the game in some years now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Coach
Those
Holly
seniors wanna
is
win it.
undefeated on either side. A lot of people don't know it. Coach Holly and Coach Scott used to coach together at Viger. But Coach Holly says it with pride, I've never lost a Battle of Pritchard game. But this might be the year.
Well, you look at senior defensive lineman Fred Alston. They don't want to be that class who never had that win against their biggest rival. And no matter whether the game's at Pritchard Stadium or at Blunt Stadium, they want that win. And they're going to try to get their season started off with one of the biggest games in the entire state of Alabama, the Blunt-Viger rivalry, second to none.
What a great way to start the season with the Battle of Pritchard.
That's right. That's right.
Well, a little bit about who Viger is going to have to go through to reach this milestone. Centronell. Centronell has a new coach in town, all right, Coach Barnett. And what are the expectations for the Wildcats?
Wildcats have some high expectations. They missed the playoffs by one game last year. That was the game they lost against Williamson. Williamson got in and Citronelle didn't. So the Wildcats have some expectations to get back to the playoffs. That year before last when they made it, you could kind of sense a vibe up in Citronelle that, hey, we're here. You have to contend with us. That move down to 5A a couple years ago, I think really helped out Citronelle. They were playing in 6A, and as we just talked about it earlier, 6A is very competitive. So they are a very strong contender in our Region 5A. And if you haven't met Coach Jason Barrett, oh my goodness, the guy could sell you sand in Alaska. He is that exciting. So he's going to pump up those kids up in our Wildcat.
They have a pretty special player too in Joffrey Hutcherson. He's a running back / middle linebacker, and Coach Barnett talked about him in the media days, talked about his burst of speed that he has, was able to run away from the entire St. Paul Saints secondary a year ago. But anytime you're looking at their record, don't let it deceive you. 5-5, Centronelle is a very hungry community, and they're looking to get things done, and I think they will.
Yeah, I think last year may have been kind of a blip for them in terms of missing the playoffs. They've got some playmakers on this team, and I think they look and they see St. Paul's is not in it anymore. Williamson's not in it anymore. Granted, you added a couple of good programs in LaFleur and Satsuma. I think they see the prize, and I think they're going to be focused on getting back this year.
You mentioned a good point, LaFleur. This is a team that is new to 5A Region 1. Coming out of 6A, so they're used to playing some really tough competition week in and week out. Coach Schamberger's been at LaFleur for a few years. What Rattlers? What's the outlook for the Rattlers?
5 offensive returners, 3 defensive returners. Coach Schamberger feels real good about getting out of 6A and moving down to 5A. I know Coach Schamberger's first 2 years as head coach, he did make the playoffs, so he knows what it feels like as the Rattler head coach to be in the playoffs. So he's going to go ahead and give that vibe to these young men who are now looking at the playoffs as a target goal, whereas in 6A Region 1 a year ago, you were just hoping to come away with a couple of wins, not to mention making the playoffs. So the mentality has changed, and senior defensive end Marquez Tatum, he wants to be the sack leader in the entire state of Alabama. So when you have those type of goals, along with run stopper Derek Dugans at your linebacker position, led by a sophomore quarterback, Hezekiah Belfon, I think the Rattlers are going to be in a position to put themselves to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I think the Rattlers will have a return to the playoffs this year. A lot of people weren't aware. Hezekiah Belfon was a true freshman last year, broke his ankle in the first game and had to sit out the rest of the season. So he's coming back. He's fresh. He played in that spring game against Theodore. So he's coming back. We've had a chance to talk to him one-on-one. Very intelligent kid, very smart. He's excited. A couple of the receivers for LaFleur, they played football together in middle school. So they're already familiar with Belfon and his delivery. And the one thing about the Rattlers, we know they have very talented basketball program. Coach Schamberger has recruited some of those basketball players to come over and play football. So in the wide receiver realm, you're looking at receivers 6'2", 6'3" that Belfon can get the ball out to. So I'm expecting the Rattlers offense to open up a bit more. They lost DeJuan James. You know, he's a 1,000-yard rusher back-to-back years. But I think that offense is going to open up. We're going to probably have a little air attack from the Rattlers this year.
And I think you have some interesting behind the scenes with 5A Region 1. You have Jackson, who Coach Powell, traditionally Jackson has a playoff contender team year in, year out. They have 2 new coordinators up there, Coach Ryan Little and Coach Justin Thomas, both very familiar with Mobile County Public Schools. Coach Little was at Murphy for a good number of years in MGM. Coach Thomas split time between Baker, Murphy, Spanish Fort. So they know each other. Then you look at Faith Academy, Coach Jack French,
the football whisperer,
who used to be the head coach at Baker High School.
And essentially turned that program around.
That's right. And then, of course, with Satsuma coming up, and who was at Satsuma last year? Coach Rick Cawley.
That's right.
So, you know.
And Coach Thomas, right?
And Coach Thomas. And so it should be really interesting.
I think it's going to be very interesting because, again, you're looking at 5A Region 1 only being a 7-team area. And, of course, the top 4 teams do make the playoffs. With that being said, you're having an opportunity each and every week when you do play those region games. They're vital. You can't drop one.
And with only 7 teams, this is one of the regions where you can get in the playoffs with 3 region wins.
That's right.
So that's how Citronelle lost out last year because they lost to Williamson. They were both 3-3 in the region. So head-to-head battles matter greatly in 5A Region 1.
Absolutely.
Just looking at those numbers, though, compared to 6A, like Coach Schamberger's got to feel a lot better about where he's at.
That's why I think LaFleur probably may make a return to playoffs this year.
Well, you mentioned Williamson. So let's kind of jump into 4A Region 1 real quick. Williamson has moved down to 4A from 5A to 4A, so they played 5A competition last year, made the playoffs, had a very good team, and now 4A Region 1. You know, what are the expectations with Coach Sumter and the Williamson Lions moving down to 4A?
Go ahead, Al.
I think expectations are the weight is somewhat off. They played competitive in 5A, but numbers, depth is the problem for Williamson. At times last season, they were only dressing out 28 players and playing 5A ball. So it's huge for Williamson to have their players healthy. Injuries can decimate a team like that. You lose 1 player, but you actually lose 3 players because the guy plays offense, defense, and special teams. So being able to dress out maybe 28, 35 guys, 4A is probably going to benefit them. I think the pressure is going to be off. But they've added a twist this year. They have a defense coordinator, Antonio Coleman, used to play ball at Auburn, but also as a quarterbacks coach, they've brought in former Williamson alumnus, Jamarcus Russell. So you think the offense should open up with some air attack because we all know what Jamarcus did in high school here.
And they lost some pretty key players.
Roger McCreary, you can't say enough about this young man, and he's moved on to play for Auburn University, and he was 90% of what they did offensively, each and every play, each and every snap. You knew it was going to go through him. And you mentioned Jamarcus coming in and helping Breland Franks. Breland Franks is the young man who's going to play the quarterback position and did play the quarterback position for the Williamson Lions a year ago. And he's a difference maker now. He's decided that he wants to go ahead and find himself in the pocket because he's a scrambling quarterback, but he knew that he's going to have to be able to make those reads, and I think Jamarcus will be able to help him be able to make those types of reads to where he goes through his progressions, and as he goes through his progressions, he'll be able to expand this Williamson offense not to becoming one-dimensional, whereas last year it was McCreary left, McCreary right, McCreary up the middle.
Everything.
You'll see something a little bit different from the Williamson Lions this year.
And I think Williamson has to guard against expectations much in the same way that Viger does because, we're moving down to 4A, it ought to be easier. It's not going to be that much easier. I mean, you've got a UMS Wright team that is a perennial powerhouse, much in the same way as St. Paul's. Right. You've got an Andalusia team that is always very good. You've got a Clark County team that's on its way up. This is going to be a tough region, and they can't just walk in there and say, hey, we're from 5A, we got this. They're going to need to find some new playmakers, and they're going to need another year of great defense, which Antonio Coleman did a marvelous job with that group last year. If they can get that defense playing the way he got them playing last year, then they'll be right in this thing, but it's not going to be a cakewalk.
Well, and it's kind of a new region.
It
is.
is.
Mean, with Williamson coming down, and then
rebuilt.
Clark County and Hillcrest Evergreen moving up from 3A, it's really almost a brand new region.
And that's the great part.
Yeah.
That's why I really love this region. I mean, you have your defending state champion in UMS Wright in this region. So anytime you have a state champion, whether they graduated everyone or that defending makes them have a bigger target on the back, makes everybody want to beat them. But you look at Breland Franks, Cornelius Johnson, Antoine Thomas, those guys are looking to make a difference. All of them are seniors. They have 6 on offense, 6 on defense. But Al mentioned it, a lot of those guys play both ways. So depth is going to be a huge factor.
Huge.
All right, when we come back, we'll close out our program.
The more parents are involved in school, the more likely it is a child will succeed. Children with involved parents and attend school regularly make better grades and have better social skills. Every involved parent makes a difference.
Get involved. Ask about your child's day. Explain how your education matters. Parent involvement, it matters.
You can find more information on parent involvement at MCPSS.com.
Hello, my name is Kyla Brown, and I am redefining ready. I'm taking AP and dual enrollment courses that will help me earn college credits while in high school. I am studying dental science that will assist me in my career choice of becoming a dentist. I am a Student Government Association representative and actively involved in other activities around my school and community. And this is how I am redefining ready.
To be inside of the advanced placement program means that you are a student whose primary goal is to go to college. And being in the advanced placement makes that so much more real for those students who are inside of it.
I feel that students shouldn't be scared to go into being an AP scholar because it's not how smart you are and it's not like your GPA, it's how much work you put into your classes and how much you are dedicated to your classes.
Welcome back to our program. A few final remarks to kind of close out our pregame show. One new topic this year in the state is instant replay. It's been kind of a hot topic over the past few years, and it's finally kind of has been instituted in Alabama. National Federation of High Schools has kind of jumped on this instant replay idea for high school football. The state of Alabama has kind of took the initiative to kind of put it in place to see, as more of a pilot, what it's going to be like, and it has offered it as an opportunity for the schools to use for this year. What are your thoughts on instant replay in high school football?
I think it's a great move for Alabama to step out and take the lead. Look at it this way, Brad. It's the world we live in. I feel it's only fair for the players for them to go to the next level they're going to experience in college. And if they're blessed enough to go to the NFL, they're going to experience in the NFL. Also look at the world we live in. That's the technology we have. Everything is Facebook this and Twittergram that and Instagram this. So it's already there. So I think it's a great enhancement for the state school board to offer this to the schools as an optional basis to get in on it. So I hope they take this lead in other areas as well, but I won't comment on that. Right?
Yeah, I know Mark Jones, the director of officials for the Alabama High School Athletic Association, when they had an opportunity a couple years ago to implement this in a spring game between Blount and Baker. Right. It was one of the pilot schools. I thought it was real interesting to see the red challenge flag that was thrown. And it's made a difference in the game. In that spring game, it prolonged it. And that's one of the things that the coaches did not like, because the officials encouraged them to challenge the play so they could utilize the technology. But the technology has been on the sidelines, like Al mentioned, for a couple of years. You see the iPads, the televisions on the sidelines, and schools are able to go back and look at the play that just happened on the sidelines with the coaches. Now you're having an opportunity, instead of coming from, well, was that a fumble? Was it not a fumble? There are going to be different issues that can be challenged, not challenged. Was it a catch? Did he break the plane? If you're able to utilize that type of technology, I'm all for it.
Well, you hit on something that I'm interested to see. How does it affect officiating on the field? Because I think we see that in other levels where a referee will throw a flag because he knows it's going to be reviewed. Are we going to see more flags being thrown so we kick things to replay or not? And how does that affect the length of games and the whole experience for fans? But the other thing I'm interested in is not everybody's going to have this technology. The onus is on the schools to purchase it. Right. Not all the schools are going to purchase it under how it's set up right now. but they'll have to use it if they go to a stadium that does use it. It's a lot of adjustment for coaches to get used to and players to get used to. It's going to be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
It is, and when talking to officials and all over the state and in our local area, I mean, they welcome instant replay. They want to get the call right.
Correct.
You
That's all
know,
we're worried about.
and you know, I think there's a misconception out there that referees are out to get somebody or they're not being fair. Bottom line is those guys want to get it right.
Yeah.
You know, and so having instant replay when speaking in terms of talking to the officials, they seem to welcome instant replay.
Yeah, the two things I found out from talking to coaches one-on-one, the majority of them are in favor of it. And the other thing is they're on the official side because they feel the officials do a great job. They say it's okay to add the instant replay. And to go back a couple years, I'll never forget when I was working sidelines for the MCPSS CV network. One of the coaches said, "Hey, I really appreciate what you guys do." He said that when they watch our replays, they see angles that they don't get to see on the field. And it made me think, wow, we're doing a great service by broadcasting the game, but then he's using it as a tool to say, you missed your block, or that was the wrong call, or that was the right call. So even what we do now, it's not the replay, it gives them a benefit to say, hey, we're doing the right things on the field with these players.
In the past, Al, you and I, we've had the benefit of going back and looking to see if a player's knee was down, to see if the catch was inbounds or not. And those are bang-bang decisions that are being made by on-field officials. And when we go back and look at the replay, we can say, well, no, it probably was not the correct call. But with that being said, humans on the field, they're going with their judgment calls. Now, again, Mike, you alluded to it. It's going to be interesting to see, is there hesitancy to throw the flag by a head coach? Is there a hesitancy to throw the flag by the official on the field or to rule a player down? Because once that whistle blows, everything stops. So it's going to be a tool for the officials, the coaches, and the players, plus the fans, for everyone to adjust when instant replay is available in the stadium.
I think you hit on it, though. Everybody wants the right call.
Absolutely.
And if instant replay, even if it takes a little bit longer, extends the game a little bit, if the calls end up being the right ones and nobody gets a victory they shouldn't have gotten, or vice versa, gets robbed of one they should have got but over a call that was missed, then I think everybody will be happy.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about our MCPSS schedule that we'll be streaming for this year.
The more parents are involved in school, the more likely it is a child will succeed. Children with involved parents and attend school regularly make better grades and have better social skills. Every involved parent makes a difference.
Get involved. Ask about your child's day. Explain how your education matters. Parent involvement, it matters.
You can find more information on parent involvement at mcpss.com.
I'm Mac McElroy and I'm a junior here at Baker High School. My future plans after I graduate high school are to go to Auburn University and get a mechanical engineering degree. And taking the AP courses could help me get credits to decrease the amount of time I had to be in college. Baker High School has prepared me for college, career, and life readiness by allowing me to participate in these clubs and classes that I'm taking now.
All right, welcome back. We're going to kind of talk about games at Mobile County Public Schools. Al and Corey will be calling this coming year and what to expect. On August 23rd, that's the season kickoff. We'll see a new coach with the Red Raiders and against LaFleur at Ladd Stadium. The next night, Friday night, is the Battle of Pritchard on August 24th with Blunt and Viger. Always going to be a great football game. The following August 31st, Theodore versus Baker, followed with Fairhope versus Murphy, Centronella versus LaFleur, the Bryant versus Theodore. That's always a great game. Two schools that traditionally are kind of a rivalry game. BC Rain versus Williamson at Ladd. Theodore versus Murphy at Ladd. Jackson versus Centronell. Theodore versus Davison at Ladd. Saraland versus Blunt. Late in the season, possibly playoff spot opportunity. And then the Battle of West Mobile, you're going to end on with MGM and Baker. When you look at that schedule and hitting on all of our schools, you know, I think they're safe to say that there's going to be a lot of things that will be playing out with this schedule as the season goes on. What are some of the games that jumps out to you guys?
Well, of course, Brad, there's always one or two games that you circle on the calendar. For myself, I have 3 of them circled. The Battle of Pritchard, where we start the season off with Blunt and Viger. I'm expecting big things out of that game. As I said earlier, I think this could be the year that Viger picks up that win. Also late in the season, October 12th, Jackson and Citronelle, big 5A Region 1 matchup. That game could have playoff implications as to who's getting in or what the seed will be. And then 2 weeks later, Saraland at Blunt. We already know that's going to be a big game. Last year, it was Daphne at Blunt, and Daphne got the win, and that helped propel them up a little higher in the seed. So those are 3 games that I'm looking at that I already have circled on the calendar, Cora.
I think Theodore versus Murphy. I think that is a huge region game because you're talking about if you're a 2 seed, you get a home playoff game in that first round. If you're a 3 seed, you travel. And that makes a world of difference in your draw. So that's one of the games that I'm really excited about being a part of and us broadcasting. You have to go to Blunt versus Viger. To me, it's one of the best rivalries, not only in the state of Alabama, but in the entire country. And the atmosphere is just second to none. Anytime you start tailgating for breakfast at Pritchard Stadium and you culminate it at the evening time for kickoff, it does not get any better. Just come out to Pritchard Stadium and watch all the tailgaters prior to kickoff for that game. And then to end the season, I'm really looking forward to Saraland versus Blunt as well. Because, again, will there be a 1st seed at stake? Will there be a 4th seed at stake? What will be week to week, like you mentioned, Brad, the stakes? Because they're going to change week to week. And if you drop a game early, you can't afford to drop one late. So I'm excited about that.
I'll touch on another rivalry, and you mentioned it earlier, Alma Bryant and Theodore down in the south part of the county. You've got one program that feels like it's gotten over the hump, finally got to the playoffs. They're bringing in a new quarterback they're real excited about. They're looking to continue their momentum. And then you got another program that's on the rise that I think is going to continue to build off of what they did last year. I think that's going to be 2 teams that are feeling good about themselves coming into the season. Clashing there and I think it's going to end up having playoff implications in that region.
Absolutely, and you know, early on, everyone wants to start off on a good note, but you know, the teams that persevere through those, it's kind of like the Battle of Pritchard. You're going to have 2 good football teams. Somebody's got to lose. How that team bounces back could dictate, because then they jump right into region play.
Now here's one that I don't have circled, but you just talked about a region play. It's a big game for the Baker Hornets. Baker has a bye in the first week of the season. So their first home game is a region game against Theodore coming to Baker Stadium, which I hear may be renamed for someone, but we'll find that out as the season develops. But that's going to be a big game for Baker right there. Week 2, 7A Region 1, smack in your face is Theodore and Baker.
Well, you know, it's definitely going to be a fun-filled year. Again, looking forward to you guys calling it again, and appreciate what you do. Mike, appreciate what you do at the office and for athletics. And we're looking forward to a great football season. Thanks for joining us, and see you at the ball games.